achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the final UFC event of 2014, which will take place on December 20th, just before Christmas, and it will be UFC Fight Night 58, featuring Lyoto Machida taking on CB Dollaway in the main event. I'll be giving you my predictions for the 6 main card fights in this episode of the show. All 6 preliminary predictions will be on the website, kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, I'm coming off an okay set of fights last week, and I think I went 13-9 overall. 2 fights, obviously one going into a contest, one not playing. I could have easily won and improved upon. The Ultimate Fighter finale, 20 finale, wasn't a great night for me. I had a couple nice wins, including the Jessica Penne victory, but the Fox card produced about $1,400 in winnings in the bet packs. My props, all 6 props that actually played out, were winners. I had a very good night overall as far as that was concerned. I picked Stipe to win that fight, and I thought he had done enough to win the fight. At the very least, I thought it was 48-47. At the most you'd give Junior was 48-47, and those 49-46 scorecards, they should be ashamed of themselves. Either way, that's the way the fight game goes. I did give you the over in that matchup, which I felt worked out very nicely. Even some of the fights I got wrong, I gave you some solid unders, including the Jamie Varner under and the Ian Entwistle under to start the card off. We've got a lot of fights to get to here, so some very interesting matchups. So let's get to our first fight of the night. We open the card in the UFC's featherweight division as Tom Stoneface Niinimaki, 21-7-1, takes on short injury replacement and debuting Renato Carneiro, who currently comes with a record of 8 wins and a single draw. As I said, this is late notice for the debut for Carneiro. He's replacing Honey Jason in just about 2 weeks, maybe a little bit less than 2 weeks notice. So he has a minimal amount of time to prepare. He last fought in July, so he certainly isn't rusty. Niinimaki started very strong in the UFC, defeating Hani Yahya in his debut in a bit of an upset, but he has been submitted in each of his last 2 fights, both in the first round, so certainly his back's against the wall in this fight. He could be facing his walking papers if he's unable to pick up the victory. Physically, Carneiro will be 2 inches taller, and he's also the former Jungle Fights featherweight champion, so he's had a pretty respectable run on the regional scene. He has 4 wins by submission, 4 wins by decision. His last submission came with a one-arm rear naked choke, so he's pretty handy there with his ability to put guys away. He has very long limbs, and he utilizes them very effectively. All 4 of his wins have come by rear naked choke. He also likes to attack with the darce, which I've seen a couple times in the footage I've seen. He has a decision win over Elias Santos, who fights at flyweight now, or fought at flyweight in the UFC, so certainly an undersized opponent, but still a name we recognize. He has a very good top game, good transitions, has faced some decent competition in his career so far. His 4 submission wins have come over 4 opponents with a combined record of 56-27, those certainly not no names or guys with really poor records, as we have a tendency to see with some debuting fighters. Methodical ground and pound when he is on top, looking for openings to set up sub opportunities, so certainly capable there. For Niinimaki, he's a BJ purple belt with 8 wins by submission. He did submit former UFCer YL Watson and not too long ago prior to getting signed with promotion. He has a very solid grappling game overall, good wrestler. He out-grappled Hani Yahya, as I mentioned, in his debut. I'll touch upon Hani Yahya in a moment, but certainly that turned some heads. As I said, he's lost back-to-back fights by submission, and he has been submitted 4 times overall, including 2005 loss to Hatsu Aoki. In his loss to Nicholas Backstrom, he did get dropped on the feet before getting subbed, and was looking okay there against Chaz Skelly, simply outmatched by a superior wrestler on the mat. Both guys in this matchup seem to be fairly capable strikers, but neither's really outstanding in what they do, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Niinimaki does have 1 loss by knockout, which came very early in his career. The short notice is very concerning for Carneiro, but at the same time, fighting in Brazil from Niinimaki is also a massive concern, if not more so. Carneiro, keep in mind, also trains with Hani Yahya, so Yahya will be able to give him a lot of perspective on what Niinimaki's capable of, and give him some insight that maybe other young fighters would not have if they didn't have a veteran fighter who's already tangled with the guy he's about to hook up with. It's hard to overlook the recent struggles of Tom Niinimaki, especially considering he's been submitted twice against a guy who seems like a pretty good and capable submission fighter. They are fighting in Brazil, so it'll be pretty hostile. I'm going to go with the new guy. I'll take Renato Carneiro to defeat Tom Niinimaki by submission. We move up now to the welterweight division as Erick Silva, 16-5-0 with 1 no contest, takes on Mike Biggie Rhodes, carrying a record of 6 wins and 3 defeats. But this fight is taking place in Brazil. Obviously, that favors the Brazilian, especially a guy like Silva, who will most likely feed off the crowd and be very energized heading into this matchup. Overall, both guys have really struggled to meet expectations. Silva started very strong in the UFC, but he's come on hard times of late since getting a push up in competition. For Biggie Rhodes, he came in with a lot of expectations, but it's gone 0-2 and looked very underwhelming in those 2 fights. Silva, serious experience advantage overall, 22 total fights, it's just 9 for Rhodes, and he's kind of taking a step back in the quality of competition, having, look at the guys that have beat him, Matt Brown, Dong Hyun Kim, and John Fitch, at least legitimate victories, not counting the Carlo Prater loss. Physically, very big welterweights. Rhodes will have a 1-inch height advantage. Reach is identical in this matchup. Rhodes really hasn't fought with a sense of urgency. That's one of the biggest concerns when you watch this guy fight. He's been outworked by busier, more active opponents. He averages 3.27 strikes per minute while giving up 4.23. Guy's just getting after it more, and him kind of sitting back and waiting for them and just not looking like he has that sense of urgency. For Silva, his exchange rate is very concerning as well. He averages 2.61 strikes landed per minute, but gives up over 5. That's because he's been in some firefights overall, especially when he loses, while his best performances seem to be short matchups. He doesn't land a lot of strikes because he puts his opponents away quickly. And 2 fights that come to mind, you look at the Matt Brown matchup, he was outlanded 118-25 in significant strikes, and John Fitch outlanded him 82-19 in significant strikes. So that's what inflates that strikes against number. Rhodes, he tends to pick his spots when he's striking. He likes to attack in bursts, but as I said, he has trouble with opponents that throw volume at him, and he's not consistent enough with his combinations. He'll throw some singles, he'll mix in a combination, and then you won't see another combination for a little while, and his opponent's building up and piling up a lead as far as connecting on strikes, which was certainly the case against Robert Whittaker. Rhodes does have 3 KOs. A decent kicking game, really likes an inside leg kick, turning side kick as well, so he will get a little flashy with those kicks, but again, not enough volume or impact for the most part when he does throw those strikes. For Erick Silva, we're very familiar with what Erick Silva does. He's incredibly aggressive when striking, throws a lot of spinning back kicks, a variety of attacks, really likes to put it on his opponents. 4 wins by knockout overall, but he certainly has more power than those numbers would suggest. He has been stopped twice by knockout, but those are some very tough, hard-fought battles, Dong Hyun Kim knocking him out, and with the clean KO and the stoppage basically on attrition, and that Brown put on him, just outworked him, beat him down, and eventually finished him. Keep in mind, though, Erick Silva was very close to finishing Matt Brown in that matchup, I think on a couple of occasions. Also, keep in mind the ground game could be central in this matchup as well. Silva's a black belt in Judo and BJJ, 9 wins by submission, 2 in the UFC. Doesn't have a great wrestling game, he really hasn't showcased good takedown numbers, but if he gets this fight to the mat, I think technically he should be the superior fighter. Rhodes was taken down late by Robert Whittaker. He was also taken down twice in his debut. He was submitted in his only loss pre-UFC to Brandon Thatch, so certainly he has been tapped out before, and I think Silva should have the technical advantage on the ground if it goes there. Silva's cardio has been his undoing in losses to Matt Brown and John Fitch, and he was simply too wild against Dong Hyun Kim, so certainly he has a lot of holes in his game where it's going to prevent him from competing with the upper echelon of the division. I don't think that's the case here as far as who he's taking on. Rhodes has potentially just failing to meet it as of right now. Rhodes doesn't carry the type of pressure or pace to break Silva either. He's going to let Silva dictate that pace and fight at a pace that he's comfortable with. I think the speed advantage for Silva will also show up here. Silva needs to avoid gassing out in pursuit of the finish, but my prediction is Erick Silva to defeat Mike Rhodes by knockout. Fight number 3 on the main cards in the UFC's lightweight division. It's one of the more intriguing matchups on this, actually over the whole event, as Elias Silverio, undefeated 11-0, takes on Rashid Highlander Magomedov with a current record of 17-1, so 2 guys with very impressive records. Both guys off to very solid starts in the UFC as well. Silverio 3-0 so far, including a win at welterweight where he looked good. Magomedov is 2-0 to kick off his, and he's looking for his 3rd victory here. Physically, Silverio is a very big lightweight. He did not look undersized when he fought at welterweight. He's 5'11", with a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage over his Russian counterpart in this matchup. Both guys are striking-based fighters. Magomedov, though, certainly superior power numbers. With 8 knockouts to just 3 for Silverio. Magomedov very quick with his attacks. Hard straight counter right, which can be very devastating, or if he pursues the attack, that right hand is very strong. Quick left inside leg kick, also will go to the body with it. He likes to double it up sometimes, he's that quick with it. Just overall, he's a very heavy and strong kicking game, which can be a big factor in his matchups. He does tend to stand a little bit too much in front of his opponents, not a ton of combos at times. He'll throw some singles and can get picked apart by guys who are active, as we saw Rodrigo Dam having some success, even though he technically was the inferior striker. Silverio, his advantage in this matchup comes in the striking exchange rates. He averages 4.40 strikes per minute compared to just 3.63 for Magomedov, and these guys are throwing, if those numbers hold true or somewhere close, Silverio is going to get a pretty good edge by the end of that fight. Both guys do a solid job defending strikes and keep their opponents under 2, which is pretty commendable in that situation. Silverio has some strong Muay Thai skills. I very much like what I've seen from him so far. A good left low kick. good low kicks overall. Front kick to the stomach, which is something that keeps guys backed up. Head kick as well. Turning side kick throws a nice variety of kicks. So both guys very strong kickers. Also, Silverio, nice long left jab, which really gets some distance on it. Throws a nice hard right hand. He uses good angles, likes to slip and rip. We saw him go to the body against Ernest Chavez as well and hurt him. Lots of movement in his attack, and he's at best when his opponent is stationary, which Magomedov tends to be a little bit. He can also counter-strike. We saw that when Isaac Valley Flag would come forward and be aggressive, he'd sit back and pop, 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 land as he came in. Now, when you go back to that Ernest Chavez matchup, though, he was tagged a couple of times when Chavez was able to get inside of kicking range, and he needs to keep those kicks to maintain that distance and not allow his opponent to get in. But again, with Magomedov looking to implement a kicking game as well, that'll actually keep this fight where Silverio is most comfortable. Silverio, we just saw him clinch up a little bit, land some solid knees and elbows from the Muay Thai plum when he got in close, and his size helps him to control his opponents, and that could be a factor here as well. Neither guys have big submission numbers overall, both 1-0 in fights ended by submission. Silverio has averaged just over 2 takedowns in his 3 UFC fights. He did land 4 against Valley Flag, and that was kind of a key part of his attack in that matchup. He's a pretty solid top game, keeps chipping away with strikes against Isaac Valley Flag. He tended to use the body lock takedown very effectively in that matchup. Again, I keep going back to his size. Physically, he's very strong, allows him to control and smother opponents from top position. Now, Magomedov, he's a national master of Sambo, so certainly has a grappling background as well. But certainly, again, it's not his focus. We've seen 0 takedown attempts in his 2 fights so far. He showed good takedown defense against Rodrigo Dam, who is a pretty good grappler in his own right. 95% takedown defense overall. He was in trouble and lost the first round against Tony Martin in his debut. Nearly got submitted in a very close armbar that many felt broke his arm or jacked it up at least. Silverio might not score a lot with the takedowns, but the simple threat of putting Magomedov on his back could keep him from being aggressive on the feet. I think the grappling could score him points, and if it does, that's a massive advantage for him. I think Elias is simply the more active striker. He's more aggressive. He needs to avoid being countered and letting his opponent land with power, but I like his volume to show up here. He's at home in Brazil, which I think is an advantage as well. When you get Russians and Brazilians together, it's always a firefight, and this has a chance to be a very good matchup. So my prediction is Elias Silverio to defeat Rashid Magomedov. I'll take Silverio to win by decision. Our next fight comes to us in the UFC's light heavyweight division. I always like watching light heavyweight bouts with young up-and-coming fighters because I'm hoping to see one of them or a couple guys start to rise up through the ranks and mix up the division that seems to have gone stale outside of the potential big matchups. Jones Cormier, Jones Gustafsson rematch, Anthony Johnson getting mixed in there. I'm looking forward to all that stuff going. Those fights at the top of the heap going on. Hopefully Rashad Evans gets back in the mix here shortly, and Phil Davis, Ryan Bader floating around there as well. But what we have here in this matchup is Antonio Carlos Jr., undefeated at 5-0, taking on Patrick Durkin Cummins. Cummins with a record of 6 wins and just a single defeat. Now, for Carlos Jr., he's making his first UFC appearance at light heavyweight after winning the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 3 heavyweight tournament championship representing Team Vanderlei. Now, keep in mind, he came in very light in those matchups. He was 212 pounds for the tournament final. I think he weighed in at 209 in one of his matchups on the show. So certainly the cut should not be an issue, as he's not that high above 205 pounds. A lot of those guys were just inflated light heavyweights competing at heavyweight for that show. For Cummins, this is his 4th UFC bout, which is hard to believe considering he only had 4 bouts prior to signing with the promotion, prior to making his debut, and he's progressively looked better in each of his UFC fights, most recently defeating Kyle Kingsbury pretty impressively despite not getting the finish. Now, both men are ground-based fighters. Carlos Jr. is a highly accredited BJJ black belt, lots of success in various BJJ competitions, including a 2010 gold medal at the Worlds. He's Nova Uniao trained, and we're all aware of how good their offensive and defensive wrestling skills are. Prior to signing with the UFC, he had 3 wins by submission, all coming in the first round, plus a semi-final win on the tournament with a first-round submission. So you see where his focus is, which is not surprising. Showed pretty good wrestling in the tournament final. Double leg off the kick, a kick attempt for a takedown. Good body lock triangle on the back. That's something, if he gets that locked in, he's very dangerous to shake off for a big man. He used it to control Marcos Rogerio in the tournament semifinals prior to hooking up a rear naked choke. He uses aggression to force mistakes on the feet. He's very, comes forward, hopes to get his opponent off guard, off balance, and eventually do something on the ground. And he's pretty good with the scrambles and able to capitalize on the situation. He has good top control, can cut through the guard very effectively, good transitions. Against Vitor Miranda in the tournament finals, he mounted him fairly quickly, but he couldn't keep him down early on. He couldn't keep him down until Miranda started to slow down a little bit. Not a ton of striking overall, at least from the top position. He does have 2 arm triangles. He seems like he's a better top game player than the bottom. We didn't see a lot of him on his back, which could be the case here, considering he's never faced an American-trained wrestler like Patrick Cummins, who's an incredibly accomplished NCAA Division I competitor. Heavy takedown game for Cummins so far. Clinch and trip takedowns, double leg, turn the corner very effectively if his opponent is able to resist initially. He's incredibly heavy on top, and his technique and power makes him very difficult to stop. So far, he's landed 13 of his 22 takedown attempts in his last 2 matchups. I said he's hard to keep off and push back when he does look to shoot. Very strong, smothering, likes to control that head to keep opponents in the place he wants them to be. Hard ground and pound, can land some decent elbows from top position. He's very active. He will attempt submissions, but his game's just not quite there yet for this level. And there's really no point in trying to tap out a BJJ, a capable BJJ player like he's facing here with the skill level he represents. This fight could see some striking as well. I expected to spend some time on the mat. Carlos, tends to wing some, big right hands with power, but not very technical, not very accurate. If he can land, they're effective, but I don't know how effective they're going to be because they're not going to land. Not a lot of combinations overall, and he holds his hands low, which leaves them open. He will come forward again, looking to create chaos, strike, throw some flurries along the cage, duck under, and look for a double leg takedown. For Cummins, he was getting tagged with some leg kicks at distance against Kyle Kingsbury. Something to keep in mind there. He has some hard body kicks of his own, still working around at a striking game overall, but he seemed much more patient. He's much more patient than Carlos, and that should help him out when they are striking. Look for him to counter the aggression with level changes and takedowns, and that's key if he can land those takedowns and set up that top position. Cummins' conditioning is decent. He slowed down a little bit against Kyle Kingsbury, but he's still effective late because he is so skilled. He will be fighting in a hostile environment. The temperature of the arena in Brazil is always a concern, especially the guys that aren't used to it. It could gas them out early. We've seen that with a number of opponents, especially when they fight Fabio Maldonado. The combination of body shots and heat in the building seems to always cost them fights. But the first fight for a Brazilian against an American wrestler is always very tough. Keep in mind there is a slight cut involved, cutting to 205. This is a big fight at home for Carlos Jr., but the grinder on top of him is going to be difficult for him to deal with. My prediction is Patrick Cummins to defeat Antonio Carlos Jr. by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we are in the UFC's bantamweight division as the former champion and number 1 ranked contender Renan Barao, 34-2-0 with 1 no contest, battles the number 14th ranked Mitch Gagnon with a current record of 12 wins and 2 defeats. Now, it's a little bit of a head scratcher for some, but I do see where this matchup is coming from. Barao, the former champion, looking for a rebound after a pretty decisive title loss and kind of punishment for that rematch kerfuffle that we had where he had to drop out, taking on a lower-ranked, lesser-known opponent in Gagnon, who has looked good in his last 4 matches and is 4-1 overall in the UFC. Barao, this is his first fight after losing the title, and I did a little survey and looked around of returning champions fighting for the first time in non-title fights after dropping that strap. They are 7-2 with the only 2 losses I've looked. These are obviously recent ones, not all the champions involved. Machida, after losing the title, came back and lost to Rampage Jackson in kind of a controversial matchup, and Matt Serra lost to Matt Hughes in his first fight after losing the welterweight title to George St. Pierre. But overall, usually very successful. Now, as I said, Barao's trying to rebound from a loss for the first time since 2005, which was the first pro fight of his career. So, 31 bouts have occurred since, between losses. So this is brand new territory for him. As I said, Mitch Gagnon has looked very good of late, almost beat Brian Caraway in his debut. But if you look at things overall, his biggest win is either Dustin Kimura or Timmy Gorman, depending on who you like more, and that between those 2 guys. And that's, not that impressive, or at least that shouldn't warrant him taking on the number 1 guy in the division, but still, I'm looking forward to seeing this fight. But then again, keep in mind, TJ Dillashaw was a bit of a head scratcher to get a shot at Gagnon, and we saw how that played, at Barao, and we all saw how that played out. Gagnon standing between some interesting fights as well. If Barao wins this fight, most likely he'll get the winner of TJ Grant, Dominic Cruz, so we certainly have some big matchups on the horizon if Renan Barao does not overlook his opponent here and can get through it. Weight cutting issues for Barao. He's known to cut a lot of weight. First fight after being pulled out of the rematch because of the issues he had. He's talked about changing his diet. Hopefully that does not impact him here. Lots of pressure coming into this matchup again. Former champion needing a win to get things back rolling. Physically, Barao 1 inch taller than his opponent. But he'll have 5-inch reach advantage, which is significant. Both guys have submission-heavy win totals. Barao, 14 wins by submission overall. Gagnon, 11 of his 12 victories have come by tap-out. The big difference is that Barao has 8 knockouts and 10 decisions to go along with his 14 submission wins, so it's much more diverse finishing capability overall compared to the Canadian. Barao, BJJ black belt. Gagnon, a BJJ purple belt. So both guys BJJ players. Obviously, we see who's got the slightly higher rank. Barao, not huge takedown numbers so far, 1.31 takedowns at 55%, but more importantly, 96% takedown defense. TJ Dillashaw and Uriah Faber went a combined 0 for 11 trying to take this man to the mat, so that shows how good he is at defending takedowns. For Mitch Gagnon, 2.21 takedowns at a 41% completion rate, 85% takedown defense, so pretty good in his own right, but he was taken down 3 times by Brian Caraway. So we'll see how that plays out here, but certainly I favor Renan Barao there. I think Gagnon's going to struggle to close the distance against, like the alpha male guys did against Barao, get in for takedowns. Faber had the same trouble. I think we see something show up here as well, where Barao keeps him on the outside. On the feet, Gagnon has power, but he doesn't have the KO numbers to suggest he can deliver that power in a manner that will put Barao down like TJ Dillashaw did, especially at least from range. He seems to fight well at close range, but again, he's going to have trouble closing that distance. Barao throws nice long punches, jab, kicking arsenal is very strong as well. Speed will keep him on the outside. All of those techniques will keep Gagnon out of range. I think Mitch, overall, he looks like he's cutting a little bit of muscle mass in his last matchup to improve his endurance, but he doesn't carry the type of pace to slow Barao down, especially not in a 3-round fight. And I don't think Mitch is that type of guy who's going to, out cardio you like a Nick Diaz would. Barao has fought vastly better competition overall, even going back to his pre-title fight days. He needs a rebound win here to get back in the hunt. This is a big fight for him. For Gagnon, massive opportunity to put himself on the map, even with a good showing in defeat. If he can hang in there and look good, this is a huge opportunity for him. Fighting in Brazil will be too much for the Canadian. My prediction is Renan Barao to defeat Mitch Gagnon by TKO. In the main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's middleweight divisions. The number 4 ranked Lyoto, the Dragon Machida, 21-5-0, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, battles the number 10th ranked Doberman, CB Dollaway, with a record of 16 wins and 6 defeats. This is the first fight for Machida after his middleweight title fight loss, which could lead to a little bit of a title fight letdown. But he has already been a champion. He's already lost a light heavyweight title opportunity against John Jones. So this is familiar territory for a veteran fighter like Lyoto. For Dollaway, still very hungry for recognition. He's kind of enduring one of those Robbie Lawler, Matt Brown-esque resurgences and looking to continue to carry it and parlay it into the success certainly Robbie Lawler and to a lesser extent Matt Brown has experienced. He did lose back-to-back matches via TKO to Mark Munoz and Jared Hammond. Since then, he's won 4 of his last 5 with a contestable split decision loss that included a point deduction against Tim Boach. So certainly he should be, in my books, on a 5-fight winning streak. And I picked Boach in that matchup. And I thought it was bogus anyway. So Machida, though, represents a very big step up in competition, considering he's fought guys like Jason Miller, Francis Carmont, who've both been cut, also Daniel Sarafian, who's now at welterweight during his current success. Machida looked very good, actually great against Mark Munoz, knocking him out. He looked very good against Gegard Mousasi. He was incredibly respectable against Chris Weidman, so his middleweight cut has gone well, and by his 4th fight, he should be 100% comfortable with that cut. Against Weidman, he had a very good fight. And he knows, though, if he's going to get another opportunity in 2015 or before his career is over, he needs to look very impressive in a couple of fights, starting with Dollaway, to earn that rematch. And time's not on his side because he's 36 years of age, and because he relies so much on speed and movement, it will catch up with him sooner rather than later. Physically, CB, 1 inch taller, 2 inch reach advantage, so keep that in mind as well, despite the fact Lyoto is the former light heavyweight. Stylistically, karate versus wrestling is what we're looking at here. Machida, 3rd-degree black belt in karate. CB Dollaway, former NCAA Division I wrestler. Also, Machida, BJJ black belt. CB Dollaway, BJJ blue belt. For CB, takedowns have been a big factor in his success. 3.84 completions at a 54% completion rate over his career. Over his last 7 wins, 20 completed takedowns. You throw in the Tim Boach fight where he landed 3. It shows how crucial it is for him to get his takedown and his wrestling game working. But in this fight, it would take Machida's striking game out of the equation. But Machida, 70% takedown, 77% takedown defense. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Prior to the Weidman fight, he had been taken down just 5 times in his last 13 matchups, taking on a number of guys who were looking to put him down. But he has been taken down a little bit more of late. 2 takedowns by Phil Davis, 1 by Dan Henderson, and of course 5 by the middleweight champion. Weidman actually landed 5 takedowns overall, as I said, on 13 attempts in that matchup, so still Machida was able to stuff 8 against a very, very good wrestler. Now, CB, though, 8 takedowns in his last 5 losses as well. 3 came in that controversial loss to Tim Boach. So, 5 and 4 losses, still not as effective overall this wrestling game, and that shows why he's coming up short in those fights, because he can't get his wrestling going. Now, Dollaway's striking is improving. He's a solid kicking game. He's aggressive. 6 wins by knockout, but only 1 in his last 12 matchups since taking a step up in competition. Good exchange rate for CB. It's actually comparable to Machida's, but it is impacted by his wrestling's ability to land from top position and stifle his opponent's striking from bottom. He does have KO losses, as I mentioned, to Mark Munoz and Jared Hammond, so his chin is a bit of an issue. He got rocked by Miller, Psycho Boy there, way back in the day. Now, Machida's style is very well known. I'm not going to go into it, but he keeps his opponents under 1.5 strikes landed per minute, which makes it very difficult for them to win fights when they can't connect. Not impossible, though, as we have seen. He's had a lot of success against wrestlers like Dan Henderson, like Ryan Bader, Randy Couture, Mark Munoz, so pretty impressive there. He uses speed and distance management to force those guys to shoot from long distance, try to come forward, and he counter strikes and can counter strike with a lot of success. But he needs to be active, not let opponents be aggressive, and not let them come forward and try to hunt him down, and in the eyes of the judges be the more aggressive fighter. That's probably what cost him in a Phil Davis fight, which was very winnable and also took place in Brazil. He's seen much more aggressive against Chris Weidman. I hope that continues to show up here. And he has a lot of knockout numbers despite his, laid-back style, so not nearly the boring fighter that some people would make him out to be. CB overall 6-1 in decisions, but no 5-round experience to his credit. Machida 11-3 in fights that go the distance, and he has gone 5 rounds 3 times with a record of 2-1, so certainly has that experience on his side. Machida's style is more suited for a longer fight if this fight goes there. Conserves his energy. We have seen CB tire a little bit. The question is with Machida, is time catching up to him? Could it cost him? It's a possibility. I don't know if that'll be the case here. CB's fighting for the 3rd time in Brazil. Certainly has experience. He's 2-0 so far with Sarafian and Cesar Ferreira victories under his belt. Could he be like Phil Davis, be the Brazilian killer? I don't know if that's the case here. Machida, I think he's going to time and catch CB coming forward at some point, land something big on his chin, and my prediction is Lyoto Machida to defeat CB Dollaway by knockout. So those are my 6 main card predictions for the UFC Fight Night 58. They're a little bit long, so I'll try and keep this short. All of my preliminary breakdowns, as always, available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I'm not 100% sure if I'll get a chance to post another video before the end of the year, if my first 2015 video will be posted, but certainly not before Christmas. So Merry Christmas if you do celebrate. If you do not celebrate Christmas or whatever faith you follow or holidays you celebrate, happy holidays, and just the best to you and your family out there for a safe and happy end of the year and a good start to 2015. As always, thank you very much for sticking with me. This is the end of my 4th season, I believe. I believe it started in 2010, heading into 2015. Hopefully we end this year with a bang and get things started off in the new year even better. Thanks as always for listening, guys. Take care.